there was a guy long ago, I'm talking about coincidences, and I had just come to this country on a visit, and they invited me to give a talk. What was the subject of the talk? Life after death. Is there life after death? There was a guy, I can give his name also, Lionel Fishman, a Jewish guy who went to war in Japan, and he married a Japanese girl there, and he came back into California. Then he moved to Denver, and her name was Ty. So Lionel and Ty had a beautiful life. They loved each other, and they had a very beautiful house they got in Denver. They got a nice car, and one day they were driving, and Lionel said to Ty, God has given us everything we wanted. Nice house, nice car, loving companionship. And as he was saying that, the car ran into a red light, struck by a truck, and Ty died on the spot. And this man was in shock for hospital for some time. And then he began to question that when we express thanks to God, when we're appreciating what He's given us, why would He kill that girl? It's not possible. Then God must be very cruel. And he went to the rabbis, he went to many people, and he got so depressed. A friend of his named Morton had to stay with him all the time so that he could take his antidepressants every 3 hours. Otherwise, he would have committed suicide. He wanted to commit suicide. He wrote letters to his parents who were in Canada, and he said that I can't understand what it is, what's happening. Ty has gone, I don't know why. So he then decided nobody could give an answer. He went to so many places. They said, no, it's just bad luck, or it's just destiny. You should accept she has gone to God's home, which must be better than this home. He said, I don't experience that. In any case, he said, if Ty has gone to God's home, I want to go there and check it out. And the only way to go is to die. She died, I'll die, I'll commit suicide. So he decided to commit suicide. He used to work in an office at that time when this happened in Detroit. He had moved from Denver to Detroit, and he was working on the 6th floor of a building, and he decided to jump from the window and kill himself. Since on working days he couldn't do it, he decided to do it on a holiday. So he said, I'll do it on a Sunday. Office is closed. Saturday some people come. Sunday nobody is coming. He had the keys. So on Sunday he went up to his office and he typed a little note to his parents that I am taking my own life and I'm leaving this note so nobody is blamed. And my reason for taking is that there is no explanation by any rabbi, by any learned person to tell me how a good person like Ty, we are expressing our thanks to God at that time she is killed and taken away. Therefore I am going also. And he typed that letter, didn't complete it, left it on the typewriter and opened the window to die. Opened the window, there was a table next to the window, and as he sat on the window to jump, his hand was on the table, it slipped, and there was a newspaper there. Newspaper with a page opened up, which said, an Indian guy here to talk about life after death. Talking of coincidences. He looked at the paper, how could this be there? This guy is going to answer, is there life after death? I have been asking the same question. Okay, I'll postpone my suicide. And he postponed the suicide. He looked around, he said, where would we talk? The newspaper had a little interview and said he'll be talking tomorrow at the Veterans Memorial Hall. So he said, okay, I have to wait till tomorrow. After a while he realized this was tomorrow, the paper was of Saturday. He said, I am going to miss the talk. He took his car, ran down, took his car and rushed to that place. By the time he rushed there, I was already talking, and he stood at the back of the audience and waiting to see what I'll say. And the questions he had put on the typewriter were the questions I answered. So he was very impressed with that. And he said, I must meet this guy. After this talk, I'm going to meet him and ask him more. But I was living in Boston at that time, in Cambridge, and so I had just come from there for the talk. So the president of the association who had arranged this, we were halfway through, people were shaking hands with me. Now this Lionel told me himself that he came up very close to see me close and then went back to stand in the line for shaking hands and talking to me. And he stood in the line. When half the line was over, the president said, time to go to the airport, and took me to the airport. Others could not shake hands, not even Lionel. He couldn't even talk to me. I went back, and my wife was waiting with me in the dinner in Cambridge. I was studying at Harvard, and this man said, how could this guy pull me out from that window and answer my questions and then doesn't want to see me? He must meet me. But I don't know where he is. He asked those people in the hall. They said, we don't know. They just hired the hall for a talk, and we don't know where the speaker has gone. So there were some books, spiritual books of the society lying around there, and he bought a couple of books, took them home, and thought, what happened? At midnight, he decided that he has to commit suicide in the morning. If I know that much, if I am really aware that the message was for him, then I should also be able to hear what he is saying now. And therefore he said, listen to me, my friend. You called me, gave me the answers. Now you have to meet me. If you don't, tomorrow morning I'm going. He said this loudly. And he banged at near the bedside, and the book dropped and opened, and found that there were addresses of representatives in different places, including Detroit. He called that number, and the president and his wife were alarmed at night. Who's calling at 12 midnight? And they said, what's happened? He said, a question of life and death. Do you know the guy who spoke today? He said, of course we know. Where is he? He is in Boston. I am driving right now to see him. He says, no, you can't drive in the midnight. And no, it's a question of life and death. If I don't drive now, I'll die. They got very alarmed. What kind of guy is this? So they called me after midnight. Received a call. Who's calling me at night? And they said, there's a guy who says his name is Lionel Fishman, and he's going to die if he doesn't come and see you right now. I said, let me talk to him. So I said, give him the phone. I talked to him because he went to their house, and he took the phone. I said, I understand you want to see me? He said, yes, immediately. I said, I'll only see you if you have patience. And he said, what do you mean patience? I said, you have to wait for 1 month. If you can wait for 1 month, I'll see you. I'll come myself. If necessary, I'll come to Detroit. 1 month later, I'm coming to Chicago for something from Boston, and you can meet me there in Chicago, or I can come to Detroit. You have to wait. If you can't wait, go and die. That was too much for the fellow. Nobody had ever talked to him like that. He said, I have to wait. He said, I have to now wait. So he waited. He waited. I came to Chicago, and he was waiting for me outside. I gave a talk in Chicago, and he was not attending the talk. He was just waiting outside in his car. And my wife came with me, and there were 2 friends of ours in their car. He said, you will drive in my car. I won't take you to Detroit. I said, okay. I said, I have to go to Detroit anyway. There is a association here called Spiritual Frontiers Fellowship, and their governing board is going to meet me in Detroit, and they made an appointment, so I'll go with you. So I sat in his car. My wife sat with the other 2 girls following us, worried constantly. Is he going to commit suicide? My wife was worried my husband will jump with him in the car on the cliff, that he's going to drive both of us over the cliff. And he said, I have many questions to ask you. 110 questions to be precise. And I have written them down. And because I knew I have to drive you in the car, I memorized them also. So I am going to ask you these questions right now. And I said, we are still in town. Let's get out of the city at least. This is too risky, with the traffic like that. And there was that Skyway in Chicago. We had to cross the Skyway. I said, we are going Skyway. Let's go out of the town, then we'll talk. He said, but I don't have time. I said, it'll take so many hours to reach Detroit. You have plenty of time. He said, no, but I have too many questions. I said, okay, then start. But before you start, let me tell you a few things. So I told him about suicide. I told him what happens and where the souls go, where disembodied spirits live, and what they do and how they come back, what's the role of suicide in a karmic pattern, things like that, which was very commonplace for me, but they seem to sparkle his eye a lot. And then I explained, for 10 or 15 minutes I talked to him. And then he says, he begins to smile. He smiled and he said, I am going over all those 110 questions. Some of them you just answered. Others are not relevant. I have nothing to ask you. I said, that's wonderful. Let's stop for coffee somewhere. We stopped to the next cafe on the highway, and my wife and the girls ran, are you okay? Everything okay? Is he going to throw you over the cliff? I said, no, he's okay too. You can talk to him. So we drove very peacefully to Detroit, and there the SFF members were sitting there. Spiritual Frontiers Fellowship people were sitting. President was a lady, she was sitting there with 5-6 people. He said, you must come to my house, which is a little way from their house, before you meet them. Is it okay? He said, let's ask them. So we stopped there, and I told them there's a man who was almost dying with suicide attempts and all that, so I'm going to spend a little time with him. He wants to show me his house, where he says his wife, Japanese wife, Tai, has left the house exactly before she died, and he not changed anything. Just to see his wife, he sees her work kitchen and tea, if she was serving tea, everything is lying exactly as it was. He wants me to see. They said, okay, we'll wait, you go. That group was sitting there, 7-8 people, you wait, and we went to his house, and he served us tea. My wife would have served you like this. Both my wife and I, we both went there. We were served tea and liked the place. But he didn't realize his house was not that near. By the time we came back, it was almost midnight. And the meeting in the evening was 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock. I said, they must have gone. And I didn't have an idea that you can telephone and call people here. It's coming from India. So I said, they must have gone. When we came back, they were still waiting. And so I apologized very profusely. And they were sitting in about 7 chairs, president in the middle and some other members of their board. And they put one chair for me to sit and answer their questions. They had some paper in their hand. So I sat down, and while apologizing, I told them what I understood, the meaning of self, fellowship and frontiership and all. I tried to explain to them what real self is, what this is. Took about another 15-20 minutes to give a little small explanation of these terms. And this man is standing behind me, Lionel Fishman. And then the president looks at her questions, and she says, I have nothing more to ask you. Anybody else has any questions? She turns around. They say, no. This guy starts laughing loudly. He says, I'm only standing to hear you say that. That boy then followed the spiritual path, went back to Japan, had a very different life, kept in touch with me. I'm only mentioning this whole story to show the power of coincidences. It was one coincidence after another. And so when coincidences happen in our life, they are not accidents. They carry the message with it.